A month before the Nina Reiser murder trial is slated to kick off, Sean Sturgeon, the victim's ex-boyfriend, admits to murdering at least 8 people.
He told the police that he had killed these people because they abused and molested him and his sister in the commune where they were growing up.
Sturgeon invites police to search his home and willingly hands over a few guns. But he refuses to give detectives any details on his supposed victims.
Now, you talk to a homicide officer, the chance to clear 8 homicides, you know what that'll do for your clearance rate for the year? They took this very seriously. They put their best people on it.
We're unable to prove that any one of those people anybody had been murdered by Sean Sturgeon. I could never substantiate the claim that happened, that he'd killed 8.5 people.
Friends, or people I had thought were friends, or people I had thought had known me, are avoiding me. Because Hans is putting all this stuff out about S&M, etc. So I told him, Paul Hoare, that I had killed people before. And I named a number, and I described some of it.
Sean's little stunt may have served his own strange purposes, but it now threatens the entire case.
This guy's bizarre. He was like a sadomasochist. So that's not going to help the prosecution associating the missing woman, the kind, loving woman, to associate her with him.
Sean's false confession was an enormously irresponsible act. Sean's false confession did have the potential to set Hans free. It gives you somebody else who also theoretically has a motive and who is now saying that he's a murderer. If you have a murderer nearby and he's also got a motive, it becomes a lot harder to convict the husband when there's no body.
Now, at a disadvantage, the prosecution makes Hans an offer.
Tell us where the body is, tell us how you killed Nina. We'll give you 3 years in prison for a voluntary manslaughter conviction. Hans rejected that outright, chose to roll the dice, as the judge later said, and go to trial.
I think it was just the allure of the missing body case. How's a prosecutor going to prove it? I can beat this case. I got a good lawyer. I haven't found her body. I'm a smart and bright guy. I'm going to get away with it.
But the cocky defendant is about to get a reality check. In a pretrial hearing, the judge rules Sean Sturgeon's false murder confession inadmissible.
To introduce another murderer into that case would very likely have resulted in setting Hans Reiser free. Now that didn't happen because the Judge Goodman issued a gag order. So the jurors were not allowed to know that Sean Sturgeon confessed to these murders.
Still, the prosecution faces an uphill battle.
On the first day of the trial, Paul Hoare put a picture of Nina Reiser with her son on an easel in the middle of the courtroom. We all realize that this is what it's all about, a missing mother whose voice cannot be heard, and that he would be representing her in a way.
You've got to convince this jury that not only is this woman missing, she's dead. She hasn't run away, she's dead. She was the kind of mother that would have never left her kids.
The prosecution contends that when Nina dropped off the children, she and Hans got into a fight that quickly turned violent.
One of the possible ways that Hans could have killed Nina was he could have choked her or strangled her to death, because he was well equipped to do that given his black belt in judo.
The final piece of the puzzle comes from Nina's 7-year-old son, Rory. He carries with him a picture he drew to try to explain his mother's absence.
He was asleep in bed, he woke up, and he noticed his father wasn't in bed, and his father ordinarily slept in the bed with him. And he saw his father coming down the stairs with a big bag in his hand, and a bag that he thought contained his mother.
He got out of the jury box, sat down on the floor, and crouched down to show how he saw his dad carrying his mom down the stairs in a bag, how he assumed that she was put in the bag. That was probably the worst part of the trial.
They said, hey, he's just a geek. That's just the way he is. He's weird. He doesn't fit the norm of everybody else. And so don't hold that against him. That's not necessarily incriminating evidence. It's because he's a geek and he's strange.
It's a pretty good defense, because Hans really is a very strange guy. Hans really is a completely socially awkward guy. To not care about people the way Hans doesn't care about people is sociopathic. It's a mental disorder.
Against the advice of his attorney, Hans Reiser insists on taking the stand.
He was acting rather civilly and trying to give straightforward answers.
The first day he testified, I thought he did quite well for himself. He seemed to be normal. He seemed to be friendly, likable. And, you know, I was a little concerned that he was going okay.
But when the questioning gets more pointed, Reiser starts to lose his cool.
Where'd you put the car seat? Was your battery out of your cell phone? Why were you hosing off your driveway? Why did you hose out the inside of your car? Why didn't you call Nina? Why did you ask for a lawyer? And when it came to all those tough questions, he was miserable. He came up with hums and haws. He would choke and cough right before he would lie.
He had an explanation for everything, but the explanation just kept adding up to a man who had just killed his wife.
Reiser stays on the stand for an incredible 11 days, burying himself deeper and deeper with every answer.
It was clear as I looked at the jury that a lot of people didn't seem to like him as much anymore. They seemed to react visibly. They laughed whenever something seemed outlandish. So it was clear that they weren't buying it.